Hey guys, I want to talk to you today about needing people. Over the past few months, I've heard lots of conversation around, gosh, I just really want to be around other people. And I've also heard many of you say, I don't know, like I'm kind of loving not having to be around other people. You know, there is this deep joy and fulfillment that comes when you feel really connected to another person, or when you feel connected to a community that feels bigger than itself, right? That it has a purpose and a vibe that goes beyond just the people in that group. And that's something that we all long for. We all long for that sense of connectedness and that sense of bonding. But doing relationships really well requires us to function at our best. It requires us to be gracious and to listen well, to share, to be patient, to be open, to be kind. And sometimes we just want to break from putting forth that kind of effort. Sometimes we need to recharge our batteries, and that's okay. So while we want this connected feeling, sometimes it feels like a lot of work, and I get that. But I want to encourage you to lean into community, specifically your small groups. All high school small groups are meeting tonight at 6:30, so you should check your email to get the link from your leader. Being in community with each other is a really beautiful thing. But these human relationships, in case you haven't figured this out yet, sometimes they're not always easy to navigate, right? Sometimes there are bumps in the road. And so you might have reservations about being involved in communities of any sort. It might feel like it's too much work. It might feel like it's going to be too stressful. And you might want to withdraw because, frankly, that just seems easier. I want to remind you, though, of the benefit and God's heart for community. And I want to remind you of this by looking at what life looked like for early followers of Jesus, because I think it gives us a good picture of God's heart for the church. In the book of the Bible called Acts, we get to see these early followers of Jesus trying to figure out what it looks like to live this life that Jesus was talking about, but not what it looks like in isolation, but what it looks like to live this out together. And that's really important because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out, well, what does it look like to follow Jesus together? So much of what we're doing as a people of faith is learning to love really well. And that implies that you're encountering other human beings, right? Having to think about how you would love others well implies that you interact with other people. It implies that we're in community. So I want you to listen to how these early followers of Jesus are described in Acts chapter 4. This is verses 32 through 35. It says, all the believers were one in heart and mind. I just love that. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had. With great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus. And God's grace was so powerfully at work in them that there were no needy persons among them. For from time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them and brought the money from the sales and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone who had a need. What we see is that this community of believers is marked by generosity and a genuine willingness to do what is good and right for the betterment of the group. This is God's heart for our relationships, for our communities, that we would be a community that is distinct in the way that we live and love. That our communities are marked by how well we love and serve others. This is what it looks like to live a life where we are putting God's heart on display. This is the kind of community that we as human beings, we crave this. We want this. And God invites us into this kind of community. And the invitation is for all people. This is what it means to be God's church. So life groups are tonight. This is the invitation to be a community that lives out this hope for community that we all long for. To belong, to be welcome, to be wanted and heard, and to be generous with each other, to be so kind to each other that we're a part of something that is bigger than ourselves. the way we interact with each other is inspired by the way that we follow Jesus. I encourage you to receive that invitation and then participate in living out that kind of community, the kind of community that Christ invites us into, and the kind of community that we all want to be a part of.